Okay, so the following podcast that you're going to see was recorded on Friday prior to the Black Lives Matter movement protest that really invigorated the United States over the weekend, as well as the rest of North America and even parts of Europe. So, for that reason, that's why we don't discuss in the issue. But I felt it was important to come here today and say that we stand in full support of the peaceful protest, full support of the movement. We will have some links below where you can look at ways you can help donate, or if you're unable to donate, at least educate yourself, help educate others, spread awareness to support Black artists, activists, a lot of communities that are really struggling right now. And of course, in Canada, this is also an Indigenous issue. So I'll try to post some links below that help out the Indigenous community as well, because this is more of an issue in Canada. And just say you have our full support. We participated in Blackout Tuesday today. Black lives do matter, of course, all day and every day. And just because this is the one weekend that's kind of sparked the protest, we should never forget about this issue. And frankly, we should be fighting for racial equality every day. All right, now that said, enjoy the podcast.
Good evening, ladies and gents. This is Charlie from Miami, Florida for Cross Continent Chats Episode 5. I am here with Rachel Bishop from Toronto, Ontario.
Hello, everybody.
This is going to be a fun topic for the first question. There is a new team in town in Toronto.
Oh, God.
This team belongs to the NWHL, or National Women's Hockey League, that will be upcoming. And the name of this team, it's interesting. The team is called the Toronto Six. Please look up the logo. The logo is also very interesting as well. It's kind of new. It's edgy. It's modern. Of course, definitely the nickname Drake invented called the Six is definitely something that resonates in this logo. So what are your thoughts on this, Rachel?
Well, I think it's terrible. And if you follow me on Twitter, you've seen part of my thoughts about this on Twitter. We got some requests to expand on this topic further, so request granted to give my full thoughts on the Toronto Six logo. And the logo that Charlie is referring to it's funny because it's the six, but it actually looks like the symbol for man if you look at it a little carefully. And it's in a women's hockey league, which is pretty hilarious. But yeah, the Toronto Six, I already don't like this hockey league. I'm not a fan of the NWHL for many reasons. I support the women who are part of the Professional Women's Players Hockey Association, who are boycotting playing in the NWHL. Majority of these women are coming from college, and they played previously in the Canadian Women's Hockey League, which just folded last year, and they don't play in the NWHL because they don't think that it's a viable option for women. And most of these are Olympians, like your Hillary Knights, your Amanda Kessels, your Natalie Spooners, your Marie-Philippe Poulins. The biggest names of the hockey world will not play in this league. So first of all, already off the hop, this league, you're missing out on the big talent to draw the crowds. Especially this team in Toronto. Most of the players are based in Toronto. You're not going to get the big stars. Their team's going to suck because they're not getting the stars. So already the league's at a disadvantage. But my thoughts on the name is, first of all, this is why I don't really like fan votes for these kinds of things, because fans usually don't know how to pick a sports name. Like most of the sports teams that were picked by fans, for example, like the Pittsburgh Penguins, it's because they played in their old arena called the Igloo. Terrible name for a hockey team. You should not leave it up to fans to pick. You should do a la Conn Smythe and just pick a name yourself as the owner, or, the Molson did Montreal Canadiens. You should not leave it up to fans, because that's how this name of Toronto Six was picked. Number two, first of all, nobody in Toronto even calls it that. That is a Drake term that Drake made up because he decided to be cool. It's because the area codes all have six in it. So 416, 647. Hence the name The Six. He has a bar called Pick Six. But really no one actually calls it that. If you're from Toronto, you know someone's from Toronto if they call it TO or T dot. You know they're not from Toronto if they call it the six. That's a good indication. No one from Toronto actually calls it that. So it's just a terrible name. It's not indicative of the city. And I won't be following because like I said, I'm not a fan of this league. I don't support it. That's a different issue altogether. But I just think it's a terrible name for a hockey team. And it doesn't, a hockey team should be fierce and scary. It doesn't like the Panthers is a good name for a team. I think a Panthers is kind of like an aggressive animal, or it should be something
What?
or it should be something that represents your town, like Edmonton Oilers. Edmonton has a lot of oil. Makes sense, right? Montreal Canadiens, French team. Makes sense. Ottawa Senators are in Ottawa. Six means nothing to most Torontonians. It's not scary. It's a dumb slang nickname. The logo looks like a man. It's just overall terrible.
Okay, all right, all right. So, okay, aside from the logo and aside from all of that, why would the NWHL fail? Like, shed a little bit on that first. Like, why would they fail?
I'm not saying well, they could fail. But the reason why I don't support the league and like these women, I don't think that it's a viable league is because they started right away as a league and they said, okay, we're going to be different because we're going to pay players right away. Right. Whereas the CWHL, they were not for profit and they took a different slow burn approach and eventually paid players. And the NWHL decided to be profit right away. Right. But what happened with that is, to a surprise of probably no one, they couldn't afford to pay players their full salaries. So the next year they were in existence, they had to slash their already paltry salaries in half. So you have the highest paid player in the league, Amanda Kessel, getting paid $20,000 American a year. Nobody can live off that. Furthermore, they didn't get insurance. And as someone who grows up in the US, you know how expensive insurance is.
It
They
is, it is.
played one game a week. They had one practice. They had to drive themselves to and from practice, basically. So they all had to work jobs on the side. And unless you're a big name superstar like an Amanda Kessel, a Hillary Knight, or one of the Lamoureux twins, you're not getting money from endorsements, or you're not getting money from, let's say, USA Hockey or Canada Hockey as an Olympic athlete. So it's not a viable option for many players because they have to make ends meet by working other jobs on the side. They're getting paid, but they're really not getting paid anything. And their salaries were cut in half. They were blindsided. They weren't even known they were going to be cut in half, like I said. And also, a lot of Canadian players, they have trouble getting visas. They can't work in the States. Again, they don't have insurance. Their stuff's not, like, their equipment's not even paid for, I believe. It's just overall not a very good situation.
Okay, so something I really want to touch upon is that pretty much in any league, the players do drive themselves to practice because there's always videos and stuff showing up in their nice fancy sports cars and showing off
Yeah,
their money.
that's true.
So um, that's something where it doesn't matter what league that you're in, any sports league, players do drive themselves to their practice
They
facility.
have to
It's
get
not like it's
the
it's
game,
not like it's a bus that comes to each of their homes and picks them up like like school,
but they do also have to get themselves to games, which is different from every other league.
Yeah, that is different because usually it's a team bus. They leave from the arena and they go to
And
the other
they
thing.
carry their own equipment as well. They're responsible for their own, like, I don't know in the NWHL. I know the Canadian Women's Hockey League, they had their equipment paid for. I think the NWHL they did too. I'm not sure, but they had to carry their own equipment. They might not even had it paid for. I'm not sure.
Yeah, it's just I think something to think about as well is it is a new league, so there's obviously going to be hiccups, and you're just hoping for it to get a lot of money and get some ground, and then they'll take care of those things like that. You're starting a league from the ground up, and because of that, there's obviously going to be issues, and it's not going to be like the NHL right away.
Right,
You're
but
not going to get the same benefits. You're not going to get all of that.
right, but if the biggest names in women's hockey refuse to play in that league, there's an issue.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. That's definitely an issue. But it's also something to think about. Like, yeah, I agree. $20,000 a year isn't a lot of money, but it's also something where they just don't have a lot of money to begin with. So that's probably all they can afford.
Right, but that's
Um,
why they shouldn't have paid the players right away, I think.
who knows? Who knows? So let's just kind of go on into another question. It's another hockey question. So as we know, the NHL has finally approved the 24 team playoff format, and they're going to go on with the season. I know last week I had my opinion that they should have just canceled the league because they cannot get their act together, and they still don't have their act together because they don't even have an opening date. The NBA actually just said July 31st is the target date that they're doing to reopen. I haven't even heard of a target date for the NHL. So that just shows the NHL still doesn't have its act together. But even with the 2014 playoff format, we're seeing teams like the Montreal Canadiens, the New York Rangers, and my Florida Panthers actually have a chance at the Stanley Cup,
Yeah.
which is cool. You know, I get some playoff hockey for once as a Panthers fan, one of the 10 fans that are Panthers. Um,
Play in hockey. It's a play in game.
whatever.
That's what the NHL
Anyway,
is calling it.
whatever. Anyway, even though due to this format, for the ninth year in a row, which is the current active longest playoff drought, the Buffalo Sabres are not going to be part of this. So even with this 2014 playoff format, they just did not work out. It didn't work.
Mhm.
So once again, Jack Eichel voiced his displeasure and voiced his frustration towards his organization and the franchise, saying that he's tired of losing. This is a mess. He can tell that he's getting more and more frustrated with this.
Yeah.
So, at this point, you're having, your Buffalo Sabres, you're having your franchise player constantly every season just tear you apart about how the team is losing and the team isn't doing well. At some point, you're going to have to stop putting up with this. So, in your thoughts, Rachel, what should they do? Should they just go for another franchise player, sell Eichel for a bunch of money, or trade him for a high value? Like, what would you do if you were, the GM of the Sabres?
Well, the GM is Jason Potterill, and
Yeah.
it's funny because he used to be the associate GM of the Penguins, and I was really upset when he left the Penguins because I thought, oh, we're letting someone really good walk away. I might have to rethink that thought because he's not impressed me so much this far in Buffalo. Really, what it comes down to is they need a goalie. Like they don't have anyone to stop the puck. Goalie is the most important position on the team. If you're not familiar with hockey, goalie would be like a quarterback, right? A quarterback or a catcher in baseball,
Yeah, a quarterback is probably, if you're looking at football, I guess. Yeah.
or a catcher in baseball. Like they're on the ice the whole game. They're the last line of defense, and a goalie can make or break your team. You can have, for example, look at Sergei Bobrovsky and the Columbus Blue Jackets in the lockout shortened season 2012-2013. That team was not good. He dragged that team to the playoffs because his goaltending was outstanding. So what it comes down to is the Sabres, for whatever reason, they have not had a goalie for 10 years in a row. They had a good goalie in Robin Lehner, and they gave him away for some reason. And he killed it in New York with the Islanders, and now he's killing it in Chicago. That's really since Ryan Miller left, they've not had a good consistent starting goalie, and that's really what it comes down to is they need to get a goalie for that team, or else that team's going nowhere. Because they also need to trade Rasmus Ristolainen because he's terrible. That's a different issue. They have good forwards for the most part. They have good defense. You have Jack Eichel, one of the best, most exciting young players in the NHL. Jack Eichel is really, really good, and of course he's frustrated. The team hasn't done anything since he's been there, and it's because no goalie on that team can stop a beach ball. It who it's ridiculous. And Buffalo is one of the oldest teams that's not an original six team, and that's a big hockey town. And they've really struggled with sports lately, and they deserve to have something good, and they need a goalie or else they're not going anywhere.
Yeah, but like, okay, that's awesome, and I like that you talked about that. But I'm talking about, what would you do about Eichel's behavior? Would you get rid of him? Would you keep him? What would you do?
I would try to look inward and because this is what the third year in a row Eichel's come out and said something,
Exactly.
right? So I would
How long can you put up with that?
Well, I would look within myself and I would say, look, our franchise player for the past 3 off seasons has complained that he's sick of losing, and we've done nothing to change it. You got Jeff Skinner, overpaid for him, but you got him. Great, you got a goal scorer. That wasn't the problem. They're not looking at the problem of the team, which again is goaltending. And Jack Eichel is, until he says it, he sounds like a broken record, but really they're not looking at the big issue of why he's saying that. If I was Jack Eichel, I would ask for a trade. And I'm surprised he hasn't asked for a trade yet. If I were Jack Eichel, sorry.
And do you think next year, he would request one after next year if they don't make it again?
After the 2021?
Yeah.
I actually saw a poll going on Twitter and someone said, when will he request a trade? And the most common option was the offseason of 2021. And I think that's very likely. If they don't make the playoffs again for the 10th year in a row next season, I would not be surprised if he requested a trade, because this is getting to Taylor Hall level negligence, like what we saw at Edmonton. Poor Taylor Hall was never in the playoffs for, what was it, 8-9 years he was in the Edmonton Oilers, and he was eventually traded, but that wasn't because he asked for a trade. And we're seeing the same pattern repeat itself with Jack Eichel in Buffalo. So I think he will ask for a trade if nothing changes by 2021.
Okay. Now my last question, my second to last question. Yes, no, it's my last question about hockey for this podcast. Of course, there's huge controversy over the 2014 playoff format, the RTP, or the return to play. So everybody's talking about if there should be an asterisk next to the Stanley Cup winner this year,
right?
Because this is such a disaster of a season, and especially with showing the NHL pretty much in its worst light, in terms of being able to handle a crisis like this. Also having issues with racism, as we talked a couple pods ago with Akim Aliu, and then of course Brendan Leipzig and their disciplinary issues. So with this, should there be an asterisk on the Stanley Cup winner this year?
This has definitely been a topic of debate on Twitter as well. Some people say yes, some people say no. I definitely tend to think there should be. Now, you could turn to the 2013 lockout short season and say, well, there's no asterisk beside the Chicago Blackhawks for their win in 48-game season. There wasn't, but that was very different. That was 48 games straight through. This has been basically we already talked about how the playoffs are a whole new season, but this, with the break, by the time the league starts up again in August, this will literally have been two separate seasons, because it will have been 4 months since the NHL last played. So yeah, great, the Boston Bruins are going to win the President's Trophy, but it's going to have been so long since that actually happened. It's like people will have forgotten. So yeah, there should be an asterisk, especially since you're beating these teams. Like, for example, you mentioned Montreal and Chicago and the Rangers. Teams that had a 3% chance of making the playoffs now have a 50% chance of moving to the official playoffs at a play-in game. I mean, that's just ridiculous. Yeah, there definitely should be an asterisk, because it's, in my opinion, this format really diminishes the accomplishment of the grind of the Stanley Cup playoffs. It's been said by people, mostly in hockey, that it's the hardest trophy to win in sports. Regardless of whether or not that's actually true, it's still very difficult. You have 4 rounds of 7-game series over a 2-month span, right? Often on back-to-back nights. Well, not often, but close together.
Yeah, I'm not really sure. I'm not really sure if it's the hardest in sports. I think one of the harder ones in sports would have to be the Super Bowl, because you only have one game to win, and you have to win, versus a 7-game series.
Yeah, that's neither here nor there whether or not it's the hardest trophy to win in sports, but it's difficult to win nonetheless, right? It's very difficult.
Of course, it's pro sports, of course.
Right. So in my opinion, it really, and you're playing the best of the best. So, and usually you're injured. As we talked about a couple podcasts ago, Patrice Bergeron with his punctured lung. Crosby's played with some broken bones before. You're injured. You're not to yourself. You're tired. teams will have literally had a full offseason to recover. The Penguins will have gotten back Jake Gensel, who they didn't think they would have for the playoffs. So you have that advantage. You're missing some other players, but regardless, players are pretty much to their full capacity. They're not injured. You have teams that don't deserve to be in the playoffs that are in the playoffs. It, in my opinion, yes, it definitely diminishes it because at this point it doesn't become the grind that we're used to. And who really wants to see Toronto Columbus? That I love the Leafs, but that's not going to be a great series, in
So
my opinion.
let's say Toronto wins the Stanley Cup.
Yes.
Do you want them to win the cup this year? Because everybody's just going to make fun of you that it's going to be an asterisk next to the Leafs finally winning the cup.
No, I would rather have them win in a proper year. Because now that
You heard that, folks. The
because
girl who's a diehard Leafs fan from Toronto, Ontario, doesn't want them to win this year because of that asterisk.
also further to that point, you're not going to be able to have a Stanley Cup parade this year. So I want to go to a Stanley Cup parade in Toronto. We won't be able to have one this year if we win. So yeah, I don't want us to win because I want a parade. Players probably, you're not going to have fans in the building. That's another thing. If you're winning the Stanley Cup and you don't have fans and you're in a city like Toronto, it's definitely going to decrease the accomplishment of it. We haven't had a Stanley Cup in over 50 years. We need to have fans in the building. So for many reasons, I think there definitely will be an asterisk. No fans, no parade, probably no players traveling with the cup, which is one of the best traditions. No crazy Alexander Ovechkin parties or of that nature. So yeah, for a variety of reasons, I think there should be an asterisk. And I've actually, this is a very long answer, but in the last couple of days, I've actually seen more people that agree with you, and I actually am leaning toward more your opinion of just canceling the season because I just think this is.
Oh my God. Can you believe it, guys? I'm actually making a point in an argument. She and I argue on a regular basis. So, like, me actually saying, oh my God, Charlie might have a point here.
And more
That's
and
awesome.
more and more people more and more people on social media have said that point, and I agree with you. I just think it's just a gong show.
I'm telling you, man, I must be a visionary of some sort. I must be. Okay, well, as you can tell, folks, with this podcast, Rachel is just on fire and she's ready to, gunning and ready to go with these answers. We're going to get out of hockey now and kind of touch on just Canada as a whole, true north, strong and free.
Yeah.
Um, Canada Pro Sports Hall of Fame has had a few new entries,
Yep.
inductions, sorry, this year. One is obviously Willie O'Ree from the NHL as being the first Black player in the NHL, if I'm correct.
Hmm.
You also have Steve Nash, NBA legend, best player to come out of Canada for now. And then as well is Lori Kane. Lori Kane is a pro golfer. She knows her stuff. She has won titles. She is a superstar. And, thinking about this, she said that she was really humbled by being part of this Pro Sports Hall of Fame. So, in my opinion, Rachel,
Hmm.
who's the next woman to be elected into the Canada Pro Sports Hall of Fame? This era is definitely the 2000s. Definitely a rise. It's definitely been a rise in Canadian athletes and Canadian stars making it and showing up on the world stage. So which woman is going to be next um, for the Hall of Fame?
That's a great question. And I was definitely surprised this woman wasn't already in the Hall of Fame. But my answer is Haley Wickenheiser. So for those
Yeah,
of you, yeah,
that's weird. She's not in the Hall of Fame. She
for the
should have been a
well,
while ago.
she just did retire. She only retired 3 years ago, but Steve Nash
Still,
Steve Nash just got in this year, and he retired a long before her. But for those of you who don't know, Haley Wickenheiser is the greatest female hockey player ever.
mm,
She is arguably like the Wayne Gretzky of women's hockey. She is Canada's all-time leading scorer in women's hockey. She has 379 points in just 276 international games. So that's 1.37 points per game.
that's just ridiculous.
Is insane. Which
That's ridiculous.
okay, so for context sake, context sake, Sidney Crosby averages I think Sidney Crosby averages about 1.28 points per game in the NHL. So she's averaging more points per game than Crosby is in Olympic hockey, the best, like all international hockey, the best of the best. 51 points in the Olympics alone. She's already in the double IHF, which is the International Ice Hockey Hall of Fame, and she's already in the Hockey Hall of Fame, right? So the two big ones. But she's not in the Canada Sports Hall of Fame, and she definitely should be. She's also the first woman to score a goal in the men's professional league when she played in the second division of the Finnish Elite League in 2003. She also tore up the Canadian University hockey when she began to play University of Calgary, which is just really unfair. She played university hockey, which is ridiculous. But she tore that up too. No surprise, of course. And she played for the C. Dib Rachel before they folded. So it's got to be Haley Wickenheiser.
Okay.
As I've said, she's just, if you think of hockey in Canada, women's hockey, she is synonymous with the sport. The best women's hockey player ever to play, and it's got to be her.
And for the folks who don't know, Haley Wickenheiser actually she just finished her degree to be a doctor. So she's actually, other than being a hockey heroine and a superstar, and a symbol for Canada, she is also fighting the front lines during this virus. So she's just a superstar in a variety of ways, and you got to give credit for her. So thank you, Haley. You probably won't see this video, but I hope you do. Thank you, Haley, for everything you've done for Canada and what you're still continuing to do.
She's
Awesome.
also a bit of she's also broken the glass ceiling a bit as well, because she's a full-time employee of the Toronto Maple Leafs. She's their player development coach. So she was on the ice with them in training camp. She worked with Mitch Marner, Austin Matthews on a regular basis, Toronto Marley. She's a full-time staff. Not many full-time women staff in the NHL, which is really awesome. So she's also doing that in addition to, as Charlie said, working on her doctorate degree. So she's just an all-around superstar.
All right. Awesome. So that's actually a fantastic answer. Next question, we're going to go into footy. So the Premier League, the English Premier League, is going to return on June 17th, which is fantastic. I've already talked about how I'm a Liverpool fan, so of course I'm very happy. Looks like Liverpool's going to win the title. With the fans at Anfield being the heart of the team, they're not going to play with fans, of course. They're actually doing hub city, so Liverpool might win the title, not even at Anfield, which is just heartbreaking, not just for the fans, but also for the squad, Jurgen Klopp, the organization as well, because all they wanted to do was win in front of the fans and show that trophy and, show that glory and end that 30-year title drought. So, with the fans at Anfield being the heart of the team, should the Reds wait for their title and celebration in order to celebrate with those fans? Star left back and the captain of Team Scotland, Andy Robertson, believes that they should do that. They should just wait till the time is right, and then they just celebrate with their fans. What do you think?
I think that's a great question. And the reason why I believe they're not, I don't know about other cities. I think some other teams might have home games at their actual stadiums. But I believe with Liverpool, I think the mayor has come out and said, we're not going to actually have games at Liverpool because it would force, because that's such a big team. Like
exactly
games at Liverpool, like the Merseyside derbies, Liverpool, Everton, and Liverpool, Manchester City, they're not going to have those at Anfield because they don't want fans to congregate in downtown Liverpool for that reason, because of the social distancing, the physical distancing, because it is a coronavirus. Soccer fans will still congregate anyways. I've been on trains in the UK which have been overbooked. People are literally standing on the train. They don't have a seat, and it's going to Liverpool because they're all going for the football match. So soccer fans in the UK, especially Liverpool fans, will do anything. So I think that's the reason why they are not going to have big games at Anfield, number one. But number two, I think Robertson makes an interesting point, and I agree with Andy Robertson. You saw, for example, last year when they won Champions League, their parade, 500,000 people flocked to downtown Liverpool. That is more than people who actually live in the city of Liverpool. By my calculation, Liverpool's about 420 or 450,000. So you had more people who actually live in Liverpool come to downtown, to the city center, to see that team and have their parade. So I think that in
And
order,
Jurgen Klopp having like Jurgen Klopp drunk as well.
Jurgen Klopp is the manager, for those who don't know. So I definitely think in order for the team to do it properly, and especially since you have bars and pubs that are designated Liverpool bars and pubs and what have you, I think I agree with Robinson. I think they definitely should wait. It will suck that it's later, but because fans haven't had that experience for so long, I think it'll make that experience that much better, because it's been so long since they've been able to have a proper celebration. It'll just enrich the experience overall, and it would just be awesome to see everyone come together and enjoy that sometime later in 2020 or even 2021.
Yeah, but also it's also the desperation because it's been 30 years since they won. So definitely add that in on top of it. And it's like,
Right.
don't worry, guys. You guys can wait a little bit longer.
And it'll be an
Let's
epic
do
party.
this.
And it'll be an epic party.
It will be an epic party. And I wish I was there because that would be fan-freaking-tastic. Awesome. Great answer. Now we're going to go into the segment that we started since the beginning, which is the RAQ, or the random ask question. I actually kind of had a hard time with this question just to figure out, something for Rachel. And, and in my thought, I want to ask you, you know, since it's random, what is better? Okay. So what is better? Grilled cheese with tomato soup or grilled cheese with ketchup?
Was this supposed to be a related question to Snowpiercer? Because
No,
okay, because that's what he
it's
has.
not.
So
I know the reference, but no. What's
okay.
better, grilled cheese with tomato soup or grilled cheese with ketchup?
I hate ketchup, so grilled cheese with tomato soup.
Can you believe this, folks? She actually hates freaking ketchup. Ketchup is one of the greatest things of all time. It's one of the greatest inventions. Well, that was a really fast RAQ.
That was
Okay,
very random.
it's a random ass question. Okay. Next is going to be a segment we started last week. It's called Sports Spectacles. So this is basically the team of the match of the week to watch. I did it last week, but it's going to be Rachel's turn. So Rachel, take it away.
All right. So for this week of sports spectacles, again, since this is the only league on, it's obviously going to be about the Bundesliga. So there's not really any good games until Saturday, June 5th. Saturday, June 6th, actually, sorry, I believe. And that is the game between Bayer Leverkusen, and Bayern Munich. This is a good game because it's two of the Bundesliga's young stars playing against each other. Of course, you have Alphonso Davies at left back, who plays midfield for Canada, which is very interesting, but he plays left back for Bayern Munich. Thomas Muller actually called him the Roadrunner. I don't know if you saw that interview.
I did.
Meet the Roadrunner. That was great. Thomas Muller, great interview. Anyways, so the Roadrunner, he is really fast. Or versus Bayer Leverkusen, and they have Kai Havertz, who Charlie talked about last week, and he's one of the best young players in the German league as well. And Christian Jack of the TSN Soccer Show actually doesn't think that Kai Havertz will be there next season, and this is related to Canada because so you have Alphonso Davies and Bayern Munich, who just signed a new 5-year contract through 2025, who's killing it. And then he doesn't think that Kai Havertz will be there next season. So Christian Jack actually pegged Bayer Leverkusen as the spot for Jonathan David to go. Jonathan David is another young Canadian superstar who is currently in the Belgian league, but he's leaving that league this summer because he's too good for it, because he scored 18 goals in the Belgian league this season, and he said he's going to Germany. So he could be going to Bayer Leverkusen. So that would just be fun to watch from a Canadian fan standpoint, because you could see a team, and since they won their last game, they're now in a Champions League spot, so they're fourth, so they're fighting for a Champions League, Europa League, and then they could possibly have a Canadian superstar, and then you have the best team in Germany who's in Champions League with another Canadian superstar who's probably going to win another Bundesliga title. And that would be a really good game, because Bayern Munich wants to win the title. Bayer Leverkusen is fighting for those points to gain their Champions League spot, because Borussia Mönchengladbach is really close to them. RB Leipzig is close to them. There's a lot of teams that are fighting for spots 4, 5, and 6.
It's Mönchengladbach, I believe.
Just
say Gladbach. It's much easier. Gladbach. It's much easier.
All right, Gladbach. So there's a lot of teams fighting for the 4, 5, and 6 spots in the Bundesliga. So they're one of them. So they'll definitely be hungry to win. And like I said, Bayern Munich, they're going to want to widen the gap between them and Borussia Dortmund, which is the second place team. So that's definitely really the only good game I would say coming up this week.
Interesting.
And that's on Sportsnet if you're in Canada as well, because all the Bayern Munich games are on Sportsnet. So
that's an interesting take, and I'm definitely sure that there are some teams that are that are not the top teams that are also would be some interesting things. So definitely would be interesting matches. So definitely tune into it, folks, because I think there's going to be another very good quality soccer this week. Yeah. Now we're going to go into our final segment of the day. This is something we've been planning for a long time. And as you can tell by all of this podcast, Rachel likes to rant. She likes to go on a tangent, and she likes to just go at it and just beat something down like crazy. So welcome to our new segment, Ranting with Rachel. So the whole thing is I'm going to give Rachel a topic, and she has 2 minutes to rant about it. All right? And I picked a topic that I know she's ranted about before, and she could go on it for hours. So we're going to turn back time to 2014-2015 NHL season. So as you know, at the end of the season, the Stanley Cup's awarded, all the other awards are awarded, the Art Ross and everything else. This is definitely a hard season, especially for the Pittsburgh Penguins and their fans, because Chris Letang unfortunately suffered a stroke. And even though he suffered a stroke, he got through it, and he ended up coming back and putting on a show like he always does. But interestingly enough, the 2014 and 2015 recipient of the Bill Masterton Memorial Trophy Award, which is, that is awarded to basically a player who goes through something intense. Either usually it's a medical issue or even mental health issue, and they make their way back into hockey. The winner was Devan Dubnyk, who was at the time the goalie of the Edmonton Oilers. So Rachel, I'm just going to leave it at that.
All right. Thank you very much, Charlie. So just to shore up a few things, Devan Dubnyk won the award as a member of the Minnesota Wild.
He was traded that year.
He was traded that year from Arizona, and previously that season he had been in Montreal, and then earlier that season he'd signed with Arizona in 2014, so then he was traded in 2015, but previously in the 2013-2014 season he'd been with Edmonton, Montreal, and then Arizona. And he was terrible in Edmonton, bad in Montreal, only a couple games, bit better in Arizona. But he was traded to the Wild in January of 2015. To his credit, he did lead the team to playoffs. He did have a .936 save percentage and a .178 goals against average with 38 straight starts to lead the Wilds. But come on. He should not have won the trophy that best exemplifies the qualities of perseverance, sportsmanship, and dedication to hockey. He won a trophy for basically overcoming being an Edmonton Oiler. He's terrible in Edmonton, bad in Montreal, better in Arizona, and led the Wild to a playoff spot. I'm not sure what he overcame. He overcame being bad at Edmonton. Like, he did not deserve. Devan Dubnyk's a good goalie. Nothing against the guy, but when you beat a guy who literally had a stroke because he had a hole in his heart at 26 years old, January 29th, 2014, he just fell on his ground before he was going to the airport to play LA. Turned out he had a mini stroke due to a hole in his heart called a PRO, I believe. I forget what it's short for, but a PRO, which everyone's born with, but it doesn't always go away in some people. A heart defect. He gets a stroke, misses only 6 weeks, goes in blood thinners, comes back and plays after only missing 6 weeks, and he would have come back earlier, but the team wouldn't let him. And he doesn't even win the Masterton Trophy for dedication and perseverance. I'm not sure what's more dedicated than a guy who literally had a life or death situation at age 26 nonetheless. And not only that, if you've ever seen Chris Letang, he's a beast. He is one of the most fit athletes in the entire NHL. His workout regimen is insane. He does 2 days mostly all off season. And for a guy like that to have a stroke and not win the Masterton, I mean, I talk about how he's underrated this whole time. Clearly his health problems are underrated too, because that's just one of the most ridiculous things I've ever seen. I don't know if that's not dedication. I honestly don't know what is. That was ridiculous. And Devin Dubnyk, like I said, nothing against the guy, but great. He led the team to a playoff spot. I'm not exactly sure what his dedication and perseverance is. Like I said, coming back from being an Edmonton Oiler.
And that's time. All right. So with that, Rachel, yeah, I agree with you. Chris Letang definitely deserved that. And with that, folks, that's the end of our podcast today. Hope you guys have a great night. Hope you guys are staying safe. Cheers. Peace out.
Thank you very much, guys. Once again, Rachel Bishop from Toronto, Charlie Whitman from Miami, Florida. And watch out for next week when we do episode 6 and some more trivia and sports spectacles from Charlie.
Oh, God, trivia.
I'll try to make it easier next time.
I hope so.